Thank you. So how will the administration respond to Hamas's latest cruel act? The U.S. hostage negotiator joins us live. Plus, Trump's pick to be Florida's governor with us here as well. But will he jump into the race? That's Topping the Hill on NewsNation tonight.
Oh, man, this is effing crazy. I am living the American dream. And anyone that thinks the American dream is dead, just look right here. You're talking to a first-generation Indian kid who's about to lead the law enforcement community, the greatest nation on God's green earth.
Crazy? Well, that's your call. But it is now official. Kash Patel sworn in as the head of the FBI this afternoon here in Washington. And over at the White House, President Trump today facing off with a Democratic governor.
You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't.
See you in court.
Every state, good, I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one.
President Trump and Maine's leaders sparring over what would happen if that state defies the administration over its position on transgender athletes in women's sports. Hello, good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. Tonight in this town, you saw there Kash Patel. The president's cabinet continues to round out. Beyond that, Howard Lutnick, sworn in as the Commerce Secretary. He is the man who will be at the forefront of the terrorist fights. And did you see what happened outside of the Beltway, perhaps? A Republican lawmaker facing serious questions about what DOGE means for his district. Our Joe Khalil live tonight on the not-so-sweet scene in the Southeast. But we begin once again with our Robert Sherman, live for us at the White House this evening. Robert?
Blake, while foreign policy has dominated the conversation here at the White House this week, a lot happening on the domestic front. While swearing in Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, he outlined a responsibility that could come under the secretary's purview: how you get your mail. The president saying he's considering merging the Postal Service with the Commerce Department, making the case he believes it will make things run more smoothly and cost efficiently. Another issue here at home, top of mind, immigration, securing the border, and deportations led by ICE. The administration has anticipated that there will be legal fights at the local level, but the president saying today to governors on both sides of the aisle, he expects them to comply.
The American people expect every city and state to fully honor ICE detainer requests, and we hope they can, and to ensure the safe transfer of criminal aliens into federal custody for immediate removal from our country.
And also in that meeting, there was the issue of FEMA, where the president mentioned North Carolina Governor Josh Stein by name, acknowledging they are across the aisle from one another, but praising him for the work he's done on the storm cleanup in his state, framing that as an example of bringing the response back to the state level. Blake?
Robert Sherman, live for us at the White House tonight. Robert, thank you. So as the rift between President Trump and the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky grows by the day, the president saying today that he believes Russia has the upper hand.
I've had very good talks with Putin, and I've had not such good talks with Ukraine. They don't have any cards, but they play it tough. But we're not going to let this continue. This war is terrible.
President Trump's special envoy to Ukraine, General Keith Kellogg, also meeting with President Vladimir Zelensky today. Much warmer words there. General Kellogg calling him, quote, the embattled and courageous leader. Well, as the Trump administration tackles issues abroad, Republican lawmakers here in Washington doing a bit of a balancing act, you could say. They are trying to find a way to support the president's agenda, including federal cuts from the Department of Government Efficiency. Lawmakers now facing backlash from their constituents back home in their districts. For example, the Republican congressman from Georgia, Rich McCormick, booed at during a town hall Thursday evening. Here was one response.
What's not reasonable is taking this chainsaw approach, which they obviously admit when they fired these people and then decided, oh, we fired the wrong people. We got to bring them back in. Why is this being jammed down the pipe so rushed and sloppily?
So
use a scalpel.
Our Joe Khalil with us now as these tensions heat up. Joe, as I understand it, that meeting was packed. There were people outside. Did that catch the congressman by surprise there a little bit?
So it did. They were not expecting that. His staff wasn't expecting that. And here's why we need to pay attention to that.
Okay.
It's one thing to have big protests outside here in D.C. So that's Roswell, Georgia. That's the 7th district of Georgia, which voted for Congressman Rich McCormick there 65 to 35. We are not talking about a liberal progressive city, right? So I can't speak for everybody who was in that meeting, but there was obviously frustration there, and it didn't seem like it was all Democrats that were doing it. So when these cuts continue to happen in places like Georgia, where you've got federal dollars that go to institutions, there could be a big impact. That's what they really have to watch there. The other thing to also keep your eye on here is generally President Trump's approval rating, we've talked about, higher than it's ever been at this point. And for DOJ specifically also, in theory. But we've talked about this with defense cuts. Once they actually happen in practice, people feel, let's see if that changes.
So let's be very clear here. This is a sample size of uno. Right? But that kind of had shades and feels of Tea Party. That's how the Tea Party started in 2010, right? Local level, organizing, town halls. We're obviously not there yet, but it's obviously something that these lawmakers have to keep an eye on.
It's too early to tell, but they do have to keep an eye on it. And it's not just that, too. It's also Republicans after the cuts, Republicans having to go back to the federal government, to the administration and say, hey, can we claw some of that stuff back that you cut? That is also something that may have an impact, too. So shades of Tea Party, let's see how it plays out.
All right, we'll see how it does. Joe Khalil, live for us tonight. Joe, thank you. Over now in the Middle East, the Jerusalem Post is reporting this evening that Israel has received what Hamas claims are the remains of Shira Bibas. She is the mother of 2, whose body was not returned to the Israeli Defense Forces on Thursday. Bibas and her young sons were murdered while in Hamas captivity. The IDF says the body that was supposed to be Shira Bibas is, quote, anonymous, unidentified. President Trump repeatedly has threatened all hell will break loose if Hamas doesn't release all of the hostages, and the commander-in-chief commenting today.
How about Hamas yesterday with the babies? How about that? We're going to take that. We're going to continue to take that. I don't think so.
Joining me now is the U.S. hostage negotiator, Adam Bowler, live with us tonight here on the Hill. Adam, thanks for being with us tonight. Appreciate it.
Of course. It's always a pleasure, Blake.
Yep. So I want to get to what you have said, what the commander-in-chief has said, what the Israeli prime minister has said. But let me just start with that report, if you don't mind. Out of the Jerusalem Post, Hamas claims that the remains of Shira Bibas have been handed over. Is that your understanding right now, Adam, as we know it, or is it too early?
What I understand is that they handed over another body. I'll believe it when I see it. I sure hope that that's Shira Bibas after all of that. But they also said it was Shira Bibas the first time. So let's have people look at it in Israel and claim one way or the other and identify whether it is forensically.
Do we have a sense of when we'll know?
They understood pretty quickly thereafter. So we'll know within 24 hours for sure, probably even sooner.
Okay. Sooner than 24 hours. You made some comments last night, Adam, saying that we need to release all of that Hamas needs to release all of the hostages or, quote unquote, face total annihilation. What did you mean by that?
I mean that the president was elected because Americans don't want any more of this bullshit. And at the end of the day, we're going to make good on that. You heard what he said today. He was extremely upset at this news. Who wouldn't be? Because not only did they not put a body in a coffin, they put a different person in, but they also bashed those 2 kids with their hands. They were not destroyed from a bomb. And so that's just obviously unacceptable. Everything they've done is unacceptable, and we're tired of it.
The president has said, you spoke of his comments, he said, are we going to continue to take that? I don't think so. I obviously hear your frustration, rightfully so. Just a horrific scene yesterday unfolding there in the Middle East. What is the administration going to do about it?
Well, I'll look back to what we've done before and what the president did before in Iran. We're going to hold them accountable, and it doesn't have to be today. It doesn't have to be tomorrow. There's a lot of time here, but we're going to make our first priority getting every single person out, including the alive American and the 4 American bodies that are there. We're going to get everybody out, and then we're going to hold people accountable, and so is Israel.
Is there a timeline? The president had talked about, obviously, noon of last weekend. That didn't come. Is there any sort of timeline going forward?
Oh, there's definitely a timeline that we've set. And at the end of the day, Israel is going to receive 6 hostages tomorrow alive. And then we'll see what things look like from a phase 2 perspective. I've given very specific recommendations to Hamas to release everybody as soon as possible. As time ticks on, you might have more that die, and I think that's only going to make things worse for them. So I think speed is obviously extremely important here.
The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today reacting to what we witnessed yesterday. I want to play some of that sound for our audience here on NewsNation or those listening to us on SiriusXM. Get your reaction on the other side.
Today, the heavens shake. The entire civilized world should condemn these horrific murders. The entire civilized world should join Israel in demanding the immediate release of all the hostages.
What is reasonably expected, Adam, to come next?
Well, I think the 6 hostages will be released, and then over a period of time, if Hamas plays ball and releases the rest, then we'll figure out what things look like the day after. And that's what we'll be thinking about. But I expect a huge concentration from the Prime Minister, from Bibi, and from our administration in getting people out alive.
Let me leave you with this. You are not negotiating with good faith actors. You are negotiating with a foreign terrorist organization, that was labeled that by Bill Clinton, kept in place by Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, Trump. Can you sort of take either me, the audience, behind what it is like negotiating with Hamas, trying to get these hostages out? What is that like, if you can explain it at all?
We don't even do it directly because our focus in the United States is not going directly to terrorist organizations because we don't want to support it. And so at the end of the day, we're working through places like Qatar, Egypt, and you have actors talking to them, trying to explain how it is eventually in their best interest one way or the other. And I think what's happened, and this is what Israel has done, is they've eliminated the people that have been blocks. And so those people that hold them now will face the same fate very quickly if they don't release them right away.
Adam Bowler, I always appreciate your time. Thank you for being with us tonight here on the Hill. Adam Bowler, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Blake.
You got it. All right. Also this evening, more fallout from the devastating wildfires that swept through Los Angeles last month. The mayor, Karen Bass, firing the LA Fire Department chief, Kristen Crowley, earlier today over her handling of the Palisades fires. Crowley will stay with the department at a lower rank. Bass, writing in a statement, quote, "We know that 1,000 firefighters that could have been on duty on the morning of the fires broke out were instead sent home on Chief Crowley's watch. Furthermore, a necessary step to an investigation was the president of the Fire Commission telling Chief Crowley to do an after-action report on the fires. The chief refused. These require her removal." As a reminder, there are lots and lots of questions about Karen Bass and what she did and did not do as well. The billionaire Rick Caruso, who ran against Bass in the last election, quickly criticized the decision to fire Crowley, blaming Bass for, quote, profoundly ill-conceived budget cuts to the fire department. According to the LA Times, real estate losses from the Palisades and Eaton fires could exceed some $30 billion, with 56% of all structures in the Pacific Palisades leveled. Nearly half of the properties in Altadena were destroyed in the Eaton fire. Still to come tonight here on the Hill, the president says he knows who he wants to be the governor of his home state of Florida. That man right there, Byron Donalds. Does Byron Donalds want the job? Is he going to announce soon? We are talking with the congressman from Southwest Florida coming up here on the Hill. Welcome to Washington. This is the center of politics. Beautiful sunset as well on this evening. We're back in 4 minutes. I'm Blake Berman. See you then.
That lickable cat treat?
Delickable delectables.
Yes. Just hurry.
Must be delicious.
Delectables, lickable treat. Deliciously delectable delectables.
Where are you headed?
Where am I headed? Am I just going to take what the market gives me? No, I can do some research.
You know, that's backed by JP Morgan's leading strategists, like us.
When you want to invest with more confidence, the answer is JP Morgan Wealth Management.
NewsNation and TheHill.com, the country's #1 digital source for political news from Washington. Together to bring you the latest insight on the events shaping politics today.
No funny business polls, only the good stuff.
NewsNation Politics, powered by The Hill.
Tonight, there is a new leader in the top office at the J. Edgar Hoover building. Kash Patel, officially sworn in as the next FBI director.
Wow. First and foremost, we were just with President Trump, and I just want to thank him. Oh, man, this is effing crazy. So obviously, you don't get here alone. You know, I'm here because of God.
Patel, one of the more talked about picks, he caught a lot of heat on the left from Democrats during his Senate confirmation over what they see as plans to purge the FBI, including Patel's previously expressed desire to turn FBI headquarters into, quote, a museum of the deep state. Now, conservatives, on the other hand, view Patel as representing fresh, needed change in an agency the president has long distrusted.
You've written everything you possibly can about me that's fake, malicious, slanderous, and defamatory. Keep it coming. Bring it on. But leave the men and women of the FBI out of it.
All right, so the FBI director, by the way, has a 10-year term, oversees roughly 38,000 employees, including nearly 14,000 special agents. Joining me now, NewsNation national security contributor Tracy Walder, former CIA, former FBI, as cool of a title as they come. Tracy, always great to see you. Great to talk to you. Kash Patel at the FBI. There's already reports out tonight that he wants to move 1,500 out of Washington down to Alabama. What is the practical impact of what Patel is going to try to do?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Blake. The first thing I do want to say is there's no question the FBI needs reform. I don't debate that in any way, shape, or form. But I think moving that many individuals is problematic. A lot of the counterintelligence and counterterrorism investigations are actually run out of headquarters because of its proximity to CIA and other intelligence gathering organizations. And if you sort of have a brain drain of that and move them elsewhere, that then becomes very problematic in terms of putting pieces together of a puzzle and really running down some of these operations.
Do you need, so the big conversation, Tracy, though, here in Washington is reform, right? These agencies, slim it down, DOJ, look at them. What about the argument from many who are Patel supporters who say, look, we got to take a look at the FBI?
I agree. We do need to take a look at the FBI. I have actually been vocal as a former FBI agent about taking a look at the FBI.
Why?
But I don't know that
why? Why did you think that?
So my issue is a little bit different in that I faced significant sexual harassment when I was there. And if we remember back to the end of September, the FBI just settled the largest sexual harassment lawsuit of any federal entity ever in the history of the United States. Those are things that desperately need to be reformed that are not necessarily being reformed as a result of this.
And what about what Patel's trying to do?
In terms of what Patel is trying to do, look, I do think in a way some of these federal entities are very bloated, particularly at the top, right, with administrators and those kinds of things. And I do think he's trying to trim that down. I don't necessarily have an issue with that piece of the puzzle, but the large sweeping changes, 1,500 agents, it is a lot. And a lot of them could be working CI and CT investigations.
All right. You're former FBI, former CIA. Obviously, change is coming. If you were to give Kash Patel one piece of advice, what would you tell him?
I would really tell him to not drop the ball focusing on those CI and counterterrorism investigations. It's really important to our national security.
We'll leave it there. Tracy Walder, NewsNation contributor. Always great to see you, Tracy. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Blake.
You got it. All right. Still much more ahead. Here on the Hill, the feud between the president and the prime minister continuing after that game last night. And the president announcing, quote, his total endorsement for Byron Donalds. He's the congressman from Southwest Florida, a rising star within Republican ranks. The president says, come on, be the governor in the state of Florida. Does he want the job? I ask him next. Welcome back here to the Hill on News Nation. Nearly 6:30 here in Washington. The president's picks getting across the finish line. Stocks, though, taking a bit of a plunge. And the U.S. and Canada, are they on thin ice? Our Libby Dean is here with what's happening on the Hill and more. Hello, Libby.
Hey, Blake. We got some key additions to President Trump's administration today. FBI Director Kash Patel, he wasn't the only one of those nominees sworn in today. Howard Lutnick also taking his oath of office to become the Commerce Secretary after being confirmed in the Senate by a vote of 51-45. Now, today, President Trump is outpacing both Joe Biden and Barack Obama when it comes to confirming his cabinet. But while the size of Trump's cabinet may be on the rise, stocks are falling. The Dow Jones fell almost 750 points today. The NASDAQ and S&P 500 also taking a tumble. This in light of new inflation concerns. We hear so much about consumer sentiment data slipping to its lowest level since November of 2023. Now, this one to watch. Trump versus Trudeau. The face-off between USA and Canada last night extending far beyond the ice. Prior to the championship match, Trump trash talking on Truth Social. No shock there, saying, quote, "I will be speaking before the governors tonight in D.C. and will sadly therefore be unable to attend, but we will all be watching." And here's the key part. If Governor Trudeau would like to join us, he would be most welcome. Now, after all that trash talking, Canada won in overtime. And Prime Minister Trudeau hitting back to Trump, saying, "You can't take our country and you can't take our game." The two on thin ice there, Blake, but that is what is happening.
You watch it last night?
I didn't watch it. You know I'm not a big sports gal.
I know. I watched, of course.
Basketball game tonight, though. I'm well informed.
There's a big basketball game tonight. I was sitting there thinking, if the U.S. wins, what is Trump going to say?
I don't think
I could only imagine what that response would have been like.
I think it would have still been more trash talking.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
If not, it would have been maybe louder, and we would have heard more of that Governor Trudeau taunting that we continue to hear.
Fantastic game last night. Thank you, Livy.
Thanks,
appreciate
Blake.
it.
America is going to be in the golden age, and it will do tremendous things for the people that live here. And as for me, stay tuned.
All right. That, of course, the Republican Congressman Byron Donalds of Florida at CPAC just a little while ago with a bit of a tease, you could say, regarding his political future. He had to address it because President Trump has endorsed the congressman as the next governor of the Sunshine State. Trump posting to Truth Social, "Run, Byron, run." He wants him to be the governor of Florida. Now, Donalds has long been a supporter of the president's. He is viewed as a rising star within conservative ranks, and now the spotlight is on him even more in what is likely to be a big and dynamic race in Florida at some point. I spoke with the congressman moments after that closely watched speech. Congressman Donalds, thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. Appreciate the time, sir.
It's good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
All right, so you said stay tuned today. I know you're not going to tell me that you're jumping into the race, right? I get it. I understand. You could have revealed it today. You didn't. But let me ask you this. The two men that you name-checked, Governor DeSantis, he jumped into the race when he ran for governor in January of 2018. When I was a young Cub reporter back in April 2010, I remember Rick Scott telling us that he was jumping into the race then. Will you make your decision by mid-April, like Rick Scott did?
Not really going to get into it now. There's a lot of different things that we're thinking through, but I do got to say, really appreciative of President Trump and his support. It's something where, I think if we decide to make that jump, the mission's going to be about making sure that Florida just goes to higher and higher heights. So right now we're having internal conversations, nothing really to put out right now.
Okay.
But I'm really appreciative of the support from President Trump and the support pouring out from so many other people around the state and around the country.
So let me ask you, because for those who aren't sort of ingrained in Florida politics, there's a lot of speculation about Casey DeSantis. Could she run potentially, the governor's wife? Everyone is their own person, right? She is not Ron DeSantis. She is Casey DeSantis. There was a poll out just released. 57% of Republicans view her favorably. How should she be viewed if she decides to to jump into the race? Should she be viewed as an extension of the governor's mansion or her own person?
I don't know. I think, look, every race is different. And so I think when you get into campaigns, no matter what the campaign is, every person has to run on their own merit, their own abilities, own talents, and their own record. And so I think if you even get into something like that in the future, really that'll be really to the judgment of the voters. Too hard to speculate on right now. Okay. I think the one thing that is clear is that, look, Governor DeSantis has done a great job for our state. We all know that. But there's going to be time to pick a new governor, and then we'll go on from there.
The News Press is the big outlet paper in your area there in Southwest Florida, which is part of what you represent. Here's their two main headlines right now. They say many watch for Byron Donalds' entry into Florida governor's race. And then the story under that is federal job cuts have some worried that the National Park Service will falter. In Washington right now, Congressman, there's the big discussion over DOJ and federal layoffs. And it seems as if the layoffs have hit your community, have hit some of your constituents. So what is the balance there of backing the president's agenda, but seeing some of your constituents lose their job and now searching for a paycheck?
Well, first of all, a couple of things. Number one, a lot of the talk about federal employees going away is simply because Democrats and people who want overgrown, massive, and ubiquitous federal government don't like to see it being shrunk. I think if you're going to talk something about parks, let's be very clear. Other than driving through the gate to pay the fee to be able to get a parking spot, if you go to a national park, there's really not much engagement with any employees except if you're on a nature tour. And I understand that. We have a responsibility as a nation that is $36 trillion in debt, that's running $2 trillion every budget year, budget deficits. We have to begin to tighten our belts. And listen, I do understand that there are some things that are not going to be able to continue the way they were previously because you're going to have to shrink the size of the federal government. But that does not mean that the federal government will not be able to be responsive. Last thing, to the fear-mongering coming from the Democrats and in some parts of the media, I would urge you to stop it because all you're doing is raising issues that do not exist. Everybody's raising red herrings, not found in
But there are some folks who are losing their job.
We have a responsibility to shrink the federal government. And I want to be very clear on this. Having a federal job is not a lifetime appointment. It's simply not. No job is a lifetime appointment. And there does come a time where you're going to have to decide to shrink the size and scope of the federal government. Unless, of course, you have $36 trillion that you're going to lend the United States in order for us to keep the whole thing going. We simply don't have the money. We have to be creative. We have to cut back. That is what we are going to have to do. It is the responsible thing that needs to be done for the future of this country.
Speaking of money, a poll out in your state in the recent days, top issues, housing and property insurance. 34% of Floridians say that's their top issue. 21% say the economy. At the end of the day, Congressman, it's coming back to people's money, people's wallets. What can they afford? What does it tell you right now that in your home state, there are still people who are saying, you know what? It costs too much.
Well, listen, the first thing I'll say, we do have an insurance crisis. We're going to have to go and think about this very broadly and kind of think outside the box on how we're going to fix it. A couple things that we probably could do is maybe look at reinsurance requirements, look at capital requirements. You got to have more insurance carriers in our state to be able to write policy. When you have more competition, prices stabilize. In some instances, prices lower. The second thing is, yes, it's more expensive to live in the state of Florida because everybody's moving to the state of Florida. And so the other piece is that because of the massive inflation created by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Democrats, the price of building anything is up massively. All building product costs are up. This goes back to the other question you asked me, why you have to begin to shrink the size and scope of the federal government. If you want to get inflation under control, for the concern about affordability in our country, that starts with stopping the federal government from massively overspending. That's one of the solutions. When it comes to Florida, we're going to have to go through doing everything we can to fix the insurance crisis so that affordability is paramount for the people in Florida and also outside of Florida, the people in the rest of our country.
All right. We'll leave it there. Congressman Byron Donalds, a rising star within the Republican Party, maybe the next Republican gubernatorial candidate in Florida. We'll see. But we'll leave it there. Congressman, thanks for being with us tonight here on The Hill. Appreciate it. All right, coming up tonight, still here on the Hill, a Georgia town hall. Speaking of Doge and cuts, look at this.
My understanding is when you say you have this many employees that you have to cut, that organization decides who they're going to cut. Now, they may make.
That is a Republican congressman in a plus 30 Republican district. So why was he facing heat last night from his constituents? And are we going to see more of this? Full panel, other side when the Hill returns.
NewsNation tonight. Border czar Tom Homan sits down with Chris. His biggest priorities 2 months into President Trump's second administration and what he says needs to change at the border. That's on Cuomo tonight at 8/7 Central, only on NewsNation.
Terrorized the streets of London. Do we finally know his identity? Best-selling crime author Patricia Cornwell joins Ashley with a harrowing revelation of who she believes the serial killer really was. Banfield tonight at 10/9 Central.
What's not reasonable is taking this chainsaw approach, which they obviously admit when they fired these people and then decided, oh, we fired the wrong people. We got to bring them back in. Why is this being jammed down the pipe so rushed and sloppily?
So
use a scalpel.
Whoa, did you hear that there? That is the congressman in the state of Georgia, Republican Rich McCormick. It was his own constituents last night in suburban Atlanta who were up in arms over the Republican lawmakers' support for DOJ's federal layoffs. The CDC, for example, which is based in Atlanta, saw some 1,300 employees terminated last week. Last night, Elon Musk sported a chainsaw given it by Javier Milei, showing how many jobs and government waste he's going to cut. But is he also risking splintering the GOP? Full panel here with me now. Niall Stanage is a White House columnist for The Hill. Jessica Anderson worked in the budget office in the first Trump administration. Chris Stirewalt, host of The Hill Sunday, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Brad Howard is a Democratic strategist. Hello. Happy Friday.
Howdy. Yes, indeed.
It's Friday. Happy
Good to be
Friday.
here.
Here we go.
All right. We'll see how it goes.
So I'm watching these videos pour in last night, Jessica, of Rich McCormick, and they were coming in. That's a district he won by 30. And I think he got caught off guard last night with them saying, whoa, what about these layoffs? What's going to happen at these town halls with Republicans?
Well, first, I'm so glad to see that we're actually doing town halls again. There was 10 years now where we haven't done them because of COVID and different things. So it's a great opportunity, I think, for Republicans to hit the streets and to defend the cuts. I mean, these are the types of issues that the president also ran on, that he won in November. And so now I think lawmakers have a really complicated job to connect the dots back to the agenda. So when the president talked about providing meaning back to the government and cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. Well, this is how it's done. And it's complicated, and it does require layoffs. And I think the scalp that we're hoping to see from DOJ is going to come this next week as the president's EO is actually operationalized, with every single agency having a DOJ head in their agency.
But then that means as more comes, Brad, more of this could potentially happen.
Yeah, and I agree. Kudos to having a town hall. I hope more Republicans do them over the next 2 years, because you're going to see a lot of this. It's not just the cuts. I think most people support waste, fraud, and abuse. It is the haphazard way. It is firing the Nuclear Safety Agency to rehire them back because, oops, we made a mistake, to, at a time when airline safety is a top concern, laying off people at the FAA. None of this makes sense to voters. It's a very chaotic way to go about this. And
I think there's voters, though, who say, yeah, Washington, Washington.
There are.
And now we're starting to see it in some of the districts.
Right, because people are getting laid off, and their economic futures are being affected, and services are getting cut. That is also what's going to drive a lot of the pushback you're going to see at these town halls. And by the way, they tried to get away from this political fallout by giving it to Elon Musk. Clearly, it's not working, because they're going to hold these members responsible.
You said in your introduction, Blake, that town hall was in a plus 30 Republican district. True. It's also in a district about 20 miles from the CDC headquarters. That's where those layoffs are taking place. All politics is local, such a cliche, but it's very easy to gin up anti-Washington sentiment. When you're talking about 1,300 people getting laid off 20 miles down the road, that picture changes pretty abruptly.
This is sample size of one, as I mentioned to Joe Khalil. But we saw stuff like this for the Tea Party back in 2010. Again, sample size of one, but I just wonder where this goes.
It goes to you're not going to see very many town halls.
Okay, all right.
A lot of telephone town halls.
So, in 2010, Republicans very effectively used town halls against Democrats to punish them for the Obama agenda. They organized, they did it effectively. They did it again against Joe Biden in school board meetings, right? They got moms out. They organized effectively and turned school board meetings into a nightmare for Democrats. Democrats want to do it to Republicans here. If Rich McCormick, if they held the election in that district today, he'd still win by 30 points. Maybe not 30 points, but he'd win by a bunch. These are activists who go to these things, and we have to be careful about not mistaking the trees for the forest. Okay. He'd win this district handily. People are upset, and we have to also remember this. Elon Musk isn't running for anything. Elon Musk wants to do a bunch of bananas-looking stuff and get all this attention and wave around a chainsaw like this was Argentina. Okay. That's not helpful for Donald Trump. That's bad for Donald Trump. And their interests eventually diverge when you get down to the fact that there are Republicans across this country in districts like these that will be affected by the cuts, and it will be consequential.
In the Hill today, whole hog politics, Democrats learn the limits of resistance, you write, sir.
Well, the question is, for Democrats, which 100 days is Donald Trump having? Is he having the 100 days of FDR, where we get the American standard, where he installed the New Deal and changed everything? Or is he having the 100 days, it's more like Napoleon, after he got back in power after his exile, and it was 100 days from being crowned emperor again to Waterloo? Democrats don't know which one it is, but I think James Carville is more correct when he tells Democrats there's nothing you can do about it anyway, so just wait until they get tangled up in their own underwear and then take advantage of it after that.
Is that the way to go?
Yeah, well, I would say I think you should speak out when you see something that is that you believe is unconstitutional or against your moral value or bad politics, whatever. But it's how you respond and at what level. It can't be 100% rage all the time. And then secondly, Democrats need to be talking about what we would do if we had the gavel as well. So while Republicans are focused on, Greenland and all the other stuff, we're focused on bringing down the cost of eggs. We're focused on bringing down the cost of housing, et cetera, and et cetera. Real quick, though, the one impact of town halls like this, it helps with candidate recruitment. Yeah. So Democrats see a weakness, and we can get a quality recruitment in there in districts we otherwise normally would not be able to.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, great. Glad the Democrats are going to recruit. Glad to see they have some sort of cohesive message, because we haven't really seen any of that since last November. We haven't really seen that from the Democrats in over a year. So I think what's happening right now is a national dialogue on whether or not we should cut spending, whether or not we should rid the government of woke programs, what those are. You hear the examples. Some are egregious and some are part of the everyday programs of the government. And at a certain point, it has to stop. And I have a little bit of a slightly different, or an add-on to Chris's point about whether or not Elon is good or bad for Republicans. Well, I think we've all been around since Coburn days of the waste, fraud, and abuse books. There was no appetite for that. It wasn't sexy. No one was really doing that except for wonks on the Hill. Now, Elon gives a permission structure or the political cover to Republicans if they can explain it to their constituents. And that's the big if. And I think that's what we need to see in these town halls.
Niall, voters' approval ratings on Congress. Republican Party, 79%. Democratic Party, 40%. There's the Democratic Party, to Chris's point, is sitting back trying to figure all this out, which way this goes.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I do think that, with all due respect to Mr. Starwald, I'm not sure that Trump is either Napoleon or FDR. He's a guy who's sitting at 45% in the latest Gallup approval rating and won the popular vote by 1.5.
All right. Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks
still to come, of course. Still to come here, other side of the break. Steyerwalt and myself. The best images of this week. We have no idea what's coming. Our team assembled them. You're going to get a little Friday night unfiltered with me and Chris. Other side.
My skeptical face.
All right, straight ahead. Henna Doba will be filling in for Elizabeth tonight on Elizabeth Vargas Reports. She'll be talking to Israel's Consul General about the appalling twist in the Hamas hostage exchange and how President Netanyahu vowed revenge. That is in 3 minutes from now, 7 o'clock Eastern, right here on News Nation. All right, Steyerwalt, calling this Friday Night Unfiltered.
I don't think you want me unfiltered.
I work on this show 10 hours a day, right?
Totally.
I know everything that's coming. We have no idea what's coming next. So we basically told the team, throw up a few images of the best images of the week.
Okay.
Let's react to them.
Tasteful nudity.
You can go first.
Yes,
so
right.
I don't know. So, there you go. That was Tiger Woods and the president at the White House this week. They were there. They're trying to hammer out that LIV PGA Tour deal.
Yeah, and he's a party to it because the Trump organization is tied to the LIV.
Yep.
And you got the LIV and the PGA. So he is both negotiating as the president and negotiating as a beneficiary of if the LIV does better, then it'll be good for Trump.
Trump would love to put that deal together.
Yeah.
I think he would love to get a PGA Tour event back at his course.
I just want Rory McIlroy to win at Augusta.
There you go.
That's all I want.
All right, next one. What do we got? What's that?
What is that?
Is that
Elon Musk's face?
Yeah, that's Elon Musk's face. What is that? Over at CPAC? There you go. Elon Musk holding that up at CPAC. He went on stage, Chris, took a bunch of questions. The first thing that I thought was, why was he wearing glasses?
Yeah, he does a lot of ketamine, I understand.
I don't know.
No, he did. He's spoken of the power of ketamine, which are animal tranquilizers to help people see the world differently and do all of that stuff. And it just seems like it's a bold play to entrust your political agenda to a person who has fathered a dozen kids with various people and has experimented with hallucinogens.
Last one real quick. Give us one more. Some of the best images of the week. Oh, eggs. This is the big story. It went to $8.
Democrats ought to be careful about their talking about eggs.
You think so?
Yeah, because the prices on eggs are being pushed up by the avian flu. Yep. Assuming that all of the chickens in America are not eventually killed by the avian flu, egg prices are going to come down. And Donald Trump is going to say 6 months from now, egg prices now very low, very low. We did it.
It was 8 when Biden gave it to me.
Yeah, so they're exploiting it, and it'll probably backfire on them later.
Last image is an easy one. You've got the best Sunday show in the biz. Let's show the folks who you got coming up on Sunday morning.
Look at that. Look at all that excellence.
I'm jealous. Austin Goolsby. You get to talk to Austin Goolsby.
Well, it's a Sunday show. We do nerdier stuff on Sunday, but I'm very interested to talk to